Hello, I'm Cheryl Meyer, and I'm otherwise known as Cheryl M. Health Muse. And what my goal is to inspire you to lead a healthier life. So when I proposed my podcast, I proposed that we present it in two different segments. The first one is It Feels Good to Feel Good, Future-Proof Your Health, where I get to share everything I have learned to return my health back to relative wellness and to live a pain-free life in spite of the fact that I have autoimmune disease. But the second part of my podcast is this episode, and that's Tell Me Your Story, the Health Muse is in. My concept with this is it's all fine and well that you hear me tell my story, but I get a lot of, it's all fine and well that it worked for you, but it's not going to work for me. And I wanted you to hear that there are lots of people out there that have made changes in their lifestyle that have supported their health and brought them back to relative wellness. We all have a couple things in common. We all owned our own health. Whatever the doctor was suggesting we did was going on a parallel path to us making these lifestyle changes where we did things that cleaned up our toxic load. We all pay attention to our body. You'll hear jazz in the background because I want you to listen to the rhythm of your health, and I want you to pay attention to what your body is telling you. My body had been trying to tell me that I was going to topple over into toxic load for some time. I just wasn't listening. So if you clean up your lifestyle and if you listen to your body, you have a very good chance not of being deprived in any way, but returning to feeling darn good. And that's what these podcasts are really all about. So thank you for joining me. This is going to be a Tell Me Your Story, the Health Muse is in episode, and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope that we all inspire you to lead a healthier, happier life. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Tell Me Your Story, the Health Muse is in. And I have a fabulous guest to share with you today who went through Lyme disease and came out the other end. So if there's anybody out there, or if you know of anybody who's struggling with Lyme disease, I want you to pay attention to this and share the link when it goes live, because this will be life-saving information. So I'm very excited to have Bridget join us. Bridget Aileen Sicsko got Lyme disease as a young child. She lives on the East Coast, so she probably was out there in the woods with all the ticks, because when I was little, I was out there in the woods with all the ticks in Pennsylvania, and they are loaded with them. And so I'm not surprised that she got Lyme disease, and I want you to hear her whole story, because she came out the other end with her mission and helping others. So welcome to my show, Bridget. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thanks for that introduction.
So why don't you start off by telling people how you knew you were sick, how young you were, and sort of where your journey began.
Yeah, so we'll take a trip down memory lane. I was about 15 years old and I started just having some really weird symptoms. That's really how all of this began. Dealing with frequent weight loss, dealing with pneumonia, getting it multiple times, getting staph infections all over my body, parasite infections. And this was not too fun at that age. You know, you're at this age where you're trying to discover yourself. You're trying to, figure out how the world works and your place in it. So how it started was I was going to doctors and we just went to like our general practitioner. They did some tests. They said it was Lyme. So that was.
Wow, that's huge.
Yes, that is huge. But the issue then began when I was put on numerous rounds of antibiotics for Lyme. And I would take it, I was like, okay, we got this. And then I would still come up with more symptoms and more symptoms. And the more that I went through this cycle and this journey, I started then to develop a lot of gut issues and gastrointestinal issues because of the heavy antibiotic use, which is pretty common. And I just didn't know at the time I should be supplementing with, say, a probiotic or a prebiotic to really help my gut microbiome. but the symptoms continued and I started to get very frustrated. I will say though that my mom had Lyme disease, so she was a little bit familiar with the unknown. My aunt had Lyme disease. My uncle had Lyme disease. So we're not really sure of all that connection. But I did have a little bit of that family support system who had a little bit of knowledge of there's something going on here. It doesn't look like ours, but that typically is how it presents.
Well, and Lyme, that's one of the problems with Lyme disease. It presents differently in everybody who gets it. And so doctors are out there sort of going, I don't know what's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, totally, Cheryl, because that was part of the experience. I was having more gut issues, more autoimmune issues, weight loss issues, but then I had my uncle who was dealing with major brain fog, fatigue, my mom who was dealing with different titers or different aspects of Lyme. So at that point, I was getting frustrated. I was on numerous rounds of antibiotics, and we were like, okay, we have to figure out something else here. So luckily, there is a Lyme specialist in New Jersey, excuse me, and we were able to go to her. Now, this is after a couple of years. So I'm giving us the condensed version of the journey.
And you were in high school, so it was interrupting your social life. It was interrupting everything. Had to be super frustrating.
Yeah, and it's interesting with Lyme for me, I didn't present on the outside. So looking at me with a lot of autoimmune conditions, right? We look, we look healthy, we look the picture of health, but inside there was so much more going on. So one part of this healing journey was the actual physical symptoms I was dealing with, the numerous rounds of antibiotics, the effects of that, but then also like the mental, emotional, spiritual relationship issues that were going on at the same time. So we go to this doctor and she was so helpful. She was so helpful. She saw this from the holistic perspective. So this is where I was introduced, diet. Let's talk about diet. Let's talk about supplements that you can be taking. And let's talk about this from an empowered perspective instead of, something is wrong with you and you have to be fixed. Instead of you have the power within you. And if you awaken to that and put the right things in your body, do the right things societally, lifestyle wise, you can start to see some changes. So that's when some of the switches started to go off in my head of there's another way that we can be healing this, right?
Fantastic. Yeah, no, my doctor, well, what I didn't know when I started researching is doctors don't get any of this in medical school. Medical schools were started by pharmaceutical companies. So at best, they get a half a day on nutrition. So when they tell you you need to lose weight or what are you eating, they don't have a clue what you should be eating. So if you look at them and say, that's all fine and well, what do you want me to eat? They don't know. They haven't learned that. So you cannot give all your power over to a doctor because they're not in your body and they don't know how you feel. So you have to start doing your own research. And I'm not saying we don't need them because yes, we do. There is no doubt that we need them, but there are lots of different kinds of doctors available. And don't stop looking for somebody who can help you because there are people out there that can help you. For me, it was a functional doctor. For you, it was a Lyme disease expert. But there are people, for somebody else, it might be a naturopath. I did a wonderful podcast with a naturopath who doesn't want to do anything that breaks the skin, but knows his supplements so well that he can bring you back to health by putting a cocktail together that's perfect for you. So don't stop searching if you don't feel good, and don't have anybody tell you that you're crazy, that there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, like let's touch upon that for a moment because one of the most pivotal parts of my healing journey was a couple years in and I started to piece some of the dots together that everything in the body is connected. I had gone to like a gastroenterologist, I went to someone for the mind, like all these different parts of me. And I started to clue together that the body was one and that these systems work harmoniously together. So I'll never forget this because we were going for a colonoscopy and I wrote up my entire medical history, all of the supplements I'd ever taken, all of the prescriptions, the antibiotics I'd ever been given, all of the diagnoses I've ever been given, because I wanted to like showcase, this is the whole picture. What do you see from this? And I'll never forget giving the folder over and he didn't look at it. And I was so upset. Thank God I had my mom, my best advocate. Like she was my voice at that time. But it was that moment when I realized I will never let people like not feel seen, heard, respected, loved, appreciated for their experience, you
Yep.
know?
Yep. That's why I became a coach. I want somebody to hear their story, because when you don't have somebody listening, and the average doctor appointment now is 5 minutes. So I would leave it a go, but I didn't talk about this. I didn't even mention it because I didn't have time. I want somebody who, if nothing else, will hear the whole litany of what's gone wrong. Not because they're hypochondriacs, because they're not. Because somebody needs to hear it and verify that they're not nuts.
Yep. Absolutely. I could not agree more. It's funny that you and I have both allowed the experiences to fuel the purpose and the passion. And like, just like we were talking about before we started, it's like if anyone's listening to this and they are in the midst of their healing, they feel not seen, they feel not heard, they feel not respected, they feel confused, they feel frustrated, all of the possible things, there is somehow beauty in this journey. You know, there's something here for us to learn. There's something for us to appreciate in the journey, regardless of how challenging it is. But like, you're not alone if you're listening to this.
Look, I went to a 3-day conference in Sedona last year, and they asked me what was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I said, getting autoimmune disease. Everybody in the circle gasped. How could that possibly have been the best thing that happened to me? Because there is nothing about my life today that has anything to do with my life before my chronic illness. It changed everything. It changed how I respect my body, how I take care of my stress, how I eat real food, how I cook. Um, I now, self-care is important to me. I was an entrepreneur. I was working 24/7, and the universe was trying to tell me I was getting sick, but it went past my brain so quick I didn't even stop to think about it. I'm in a totally different relationship. I was in a relationship where he thought he was supportive, but he wasn't particularly. And instead, I found my soulmate, who's my partner in everything. So don't be afraid to go on the journey. There's a reason that you're going through it. And yes, I will always have autoimmune disease, but I don't have pain anymore. And that's huge. And yes, I have to be more careful when I do certain things because I can trigger what's called a flare. But my life is so much better than it was before I got sick. And I feel better than I did in my 50s, and I'm 72. So you can make a difference in your health. You just have to own it, and you have to go on a treasure hunt to find out what's going wrong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because I've been asked the question so many times of like, how did you heal? Like, what was the thing? And I'm like, unfortunately, it wasn't one thing. It was a beautiful cocktail of changing my lifestyle, changing how I respected myself, changing my relationship with others, changing what I did, changing how I viewed this journey. Choosing doctors who supported me using my voice and honored my experiences, right? Like I would go to acupuncture, chiropractor, like people that really valued the whole system. Yoga, Ayurveda, it was this beautiful cauldron of healing, but it was a journey. But I'm so grateful, just like you, so grateful. It made me who I am today.
So, whatever you're going through out there, don't be afraid of it. Just keep searching for answers because you will find them, or contact one of us because we'll help you. But there are other people out there like us that can help you. But it starts with you owning it and being willing to be open to find new ways to heal your body, because that's the critical component. So, okay, so now you're starting to feel better. How did that happen?
Again, the journey. When I look back, there was something that personally I was doing to limit myself. And it was a little bit of this like victim mentality, feeling bad for myself that this was happening, getting subconscious attention for this. And remember, I was so young, so I didn't understand in the moment, this didn't make any sense to me. But now, as I looked back, there was a part of me that said, I think I secretly want this to not stop. I'm secretly craving some of this attention, which is very, very interesting. So part of the healing journey for me was like owning that I am the creator, owning that I am my own healer, owning that I deserve to be healed, I deserve to live a different way. And that came through a lot of the mindset, self-development, growth work that I started in my early 20s, because this was a very long healing journey and it wasn't just overnight. Although my physical symptoms did stop at a certain point, I would say around the age of 19, 20. But from there, it was really the path of self-discovery. It was me just figuring out who I am, asking myself challenging questions, reflecting on past relationships or past challenges or past events, and starting to redirect how I looked at those things. So that was very pivotal, the mindset piece of who I am, what was my journey in my healing, what was my role in my healing or not healing.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And there will be people along the way that may not support you.
Yeah.
I was in a long-term relationship and we broke up. It was devastating to me. But one of the things I started looking at was, did that relationship really do for me what I needed it to do? And I was lucky. I took a class from a woman named Allison Armstrong, and I chose her class because she does men who love women and the women that love them. I didn't want to go into male bashing, even though at 63 or 64, I was in a breakup once again, and I didn't want to keep making the same mistakes. But she looked at me at the end of the course and she said, Cheryl, your problem is you want to fit into their life.
Mm.
Where are your priorities? She said, I want a non negotiable list from you that you won't enter another relationship unless he supports you in all the ways on your list. Wow, was that eye opening? And it was amazing because I went on the old fogey dating site and I met my husband today. In 3 days, he answered and he lived 10 minutes away from me. And it was a national site.
Wow.
And it was funny because he called me. He said, I don't want to go through this on this dating site. He had just lost his wife of 42 years. And he said, let's talk. I'll call you. And he went down the list and told me all the reasons why he was perfect for me. So he paid attention. And he said, and my last thing was, you have to want to go on a get well journey with me because I'm on a get well journey and I don't want to be interrupted by that. And he said, I've gained a lot of weight because I've been the sole caretaker for my wife with cancer for the last 5 years. He said, so I've gained a lot of weight, but if you hang in there with me, I'm probably the nicest man you ever met. And you want to know something? He lost 80 pounds the first year we were together, and he is one of the nicest men I could have ever met. So yeah, and he's a statistician. I was creative. I designed jewelry. So I wasn't sure we were really going to get together, but we both loved to read. So that's where we started. But he produces my podcast. He edited both my books. I mean, and now he's writing his book, and I'm going to do the same thing for him. And like you, I opened up a publishing company. I don't want to publish other people's books. You might, but I wanted a place where we could house all of our stuff together, our podcasts and our books, just under one roof.
I love this. And I think this is what, before we started, we talked about the importance of community and surrounding ourselves with supportive people. And for me, this was so crucial on my healing journey because if my mom wasn't keen to holistic healing, food as medicine, my journey might have looked a lot different. And albeit that would be fine too, right? Because it's all perfect and divine. But thank God for her. Thank God for both my parents. Thank God for a family, an entire family, like extended family who care about nutrition. Like our family parties are like, okay, who's gluten-free? Who's the vegan in the family? Like very understanding of these different limitations dietary wise. And then I'm just going to highlight my husband for a moment because you're highlighting yours. Like,
yeah,
I believe in a relationship, we need to, number one, choose ourselves, but then choose people who want to grow with us.
right.
Just like you did with your husband and that whole journey. And my husband, when we first started dating, same thing, lost all of this weight, started practicing yoga, started working out, started putting good foods into his body. But we have to first say yes to ourselves because then we become this like ripple effect in the world. We become this mirror for people to really see who they are too.
And if you have a partner who is of like mind, which John was and your husband was, it's so much easier to do it because neither one of us eat the standard American diet. I'm sorry that my gardener's outside. I hope they're not going to hear this on the podcast, but we don't eat the standard American diet. So we're swimming upstream against almost everybody else in our life. But over the 6 years we've been together, married, and the 3 years before that, our friends have started being influenced by how we eat as well. And so our community, old community, new community, we're all headed towards a healthier direction, but we didn't push any of them. We would just invite them over to dinner and we would serve things like Moroccan cauliflower rice. So they go, this is cauliflower? And the number one question in the beginning was, aren't you deprived? Heck no. I was deprived when I was eating all that crud because my body felt lousy. And so you can't put in low quality ingredients and think you're going to have a high quality body. It doesn't work that way. So my second book is all about how I live in community, but don't do what community does. How do I go to restaurants? How do I go to other people's houses for dinner? How do we travel domestically? How do we go to Europe? And yes, it takes a little bit of planning, but you don't have to give up all of your great, healthy, new habits, no matter where you are. And people will understand. If somebody invites me over to dinner and I don't know what they're going to cook, somebody said, you're not going to make me cook for you. No, I'm not. I'm going to call you and tell you I'm thrilled I'm going to your house for dinner. And I hope you don't mind because I'm going to bring food for John and I to eat, and I'll bring plenty so your guests can taste it. But we're coming because we want to get to know you and your friends, and we're thrilled to join you. Nobody's going to say, no, you can't come or you have to eat my food.
Right. Right.
So you have to just start putting yourself out there. This is important to you. And so this is how you're going to live.
Yeah. And this is part of my healing journey, was also me starting to use my voice for myself, right? To speak up and be like, what is everyone making? What can I bring to make sure that I have something? And yes, it could be a little uncomfortable at first when you feel like you might be disrespecting someone for bringing something maybe of a more healthy variety. But at the end of the day, if someone doesn't understand that, you put yourself first, they probably don't do that for themselves. So we can't be mad at them or judge them. Like, they're on their own journey, but you have to do you. And especially when it comes to healing, you have to put yourself first. You have to. It's non-negotiable.
And if you have to live with you.
Yeah.
So if you don't put yourself first, nobody else is going to. And so you've got to. The very first dinner party that I went to, I took a dish and I didn't put any in a separate container, and it got eaten so quickly I didn't get any. So I will warn you, if you start to learn how to cook really healthy things, nobody says, oh, ick, this is healthy, I don't want to eat it. They say, wow, this is healthy. So make sure you take a little bit so that you're not going to starve at the end of the night, that you have some in the kitchen that's just for you. Because you're probably not going to eat the other food that people have brought to the party. And it's great that you've introduced them to something super healthy.
Yep. Because most people have this perception that health food is gross or bland or boring. And in my experience, it's been anything but. And I will say, understanding and learning more about Ayurveda, the sister science of yoga that teaches us how to come into balance with our body, our unique body, right? Because no one's the same. There's so many different recipes. There's so many spices we can use. There's so many herbs that we can infuse into our cooking. And, you say that you're creative. You made jewelry. Like, I love creating in the kitchen. And this can be such a therapeutic healing outlet for people also when they're healing.
Absolutely. And I'll look up anybody's recipe and convert it to healthy now.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to do that. Somebody said, there's not enough to cook. Oh God, yes, there is. The world is endless to what you can cook. And things like spices and herbs add complexity, but they also add health. They all have incredibly healthy aspects to them. So they not only make your food taste different, but they're doing all kinds of wondrous things in your body. That's great too. So don't be afraid. People who don't cook don't know that you get a rhythm. And once you have that rhythm, it's not hard to cook. You just go start putting stuff together, and you're a taster. So while you're putting food together, you're tasting, you're adjusting, you're starting to make stuff that's really yummy. The The only problem I have is if I make something that's really sensational, I don't know what I did. So I might not be able to recreate it exactly the way it was. But then you make something else that's also creative and pretty yummy. So it's not the end of the world.
I hear you. When my husband and I first started dating, we loved cooking together. So we started like writing down some of the things that we were making because just like you, I was throwing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, no measurements anywhere, no idea, but it tasted so good.
Right. And because I have autoimmune disease, I have 18 food sensitivities. So I cook around a lot of stuff that normal people don't have to cook around. But my key to that is every morning when you get up, you have a conversation with yourself in the mirror. How do you feel today? Because if I ate something that I probably shouldn't have, but don't know I shouldn't have, my body talks to me. I never listened to it before. And then I go through like a computer. I go through what did I do yesterday that's making me feel a little off. And then I don't eat that again for maybe 4 or 5 days and try it again. And if it triggers me again, then it's gone. I don't need to have that. I'll cook around one more thing. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I think this is important too. Like on the healing journey, you're given an invitation to get to know yourself and to start to listen to these very subtle signals that your body is always giving you. We just weren't taught to listen. We were only taught to listen if it was like the worst of the worst. But every single day, our body talks to us. You know, we can feel something if our belly feels a little bit off. Okay, well, what do we eat? What's going on in our life that maybe we're not digesting well? Like, because we digest thoughts too. So we can start to ask ourselves these questions. We can start to identify things that we're doing during the day. Maybe you've been on the computer all day long and you haven't taken a moment outside with nature and you start to feel really spacey and all over the place. Well, you probably need to connect with the earth again, like come back down to earth. It's all it makes a lot of sense, but we're not always taught this. So healing is also a journey and an opportunity for you to listen and get to know these subtle nuggets that are always being shown to us.
And I've come to the conclusion, and I bet you will agree with this, most people, and certainly this was true of me, don't know how lousy they feel
Yes.
because they don't stop and think about it. And so they just keep going. And the standard American diet, which is processed food, fast food, processed frozen food, and a lot of the restaurant food, because they're getting it now in little baggies and nuking it and arranging it on your plate. So if that's the food you're eating, trust me, you can feel better. So you're not going to be deprived when you give that stuff up. You are going to be slightly inconvenienced in the beginning because it's not going to be chabing chabang, but I can put food on the table now just as quick as I could before. And it's faster than jumping in my car and going pick up some fast food that has absolutely no nutrition in it. So you reach a point where it's not inconvenient at all, but you have to sort of go through that transition.
Yep.
And it's worth it because when you start to feel good, your body starts to celebrate. And I had no idea my body was so smart.
Absolutely. And I mean, during my healing journey as well, I then went to college and I lived as a college student. So I was not putting all the good things into my body, even though I had the deeper knowledge that it was there. So sometimes we have the experience of polarity, of the opposite, of not taking care of ourselves, to then come back to, wow, this is what wholeness feels like. This is what nutrition feels like. This is what it feels like to be in my body.
Yeah, one of my favorite books is by Dr. Libby Weaver, who is an Aussie, who
Mhm.
is a biochemist, and she wrote a book, Accidentally Overweight. And it's really not about being overweight as much as she takes each organ system, tells you what it does, what goes wrong, what to do about it when it goes wrong, and then how it fits in with the next organ system in your body. So that you go through the liver to the pancreas and the gallbladder, somewhere in between that. You go through everything and you begin to realize how your body all works together. Because if one body, yeah, I just did a podcast on the liver. Number one cause of heart disease is fatty liver, even more so than smoking. So think about how all the organs fit together. But she has a quote that I like, which is why I brought her up. Why do you do what you do when you know what you know?
Mm.
I put that up on the wall in my office because sometimes I too want to veer off of my healthy eating, and then my body immediately tells me, should not have done that. It wasn't worth it. And so I read that phrase, why did I do what I did when I know what I know? And so remind yourself when you start to learn what is healthier living, that that's the way you want to live because that's what makes you feel good. And you know that. And it's okay that you aren't perfect all the time. There's no reason to get twisty about it. But you need to remind yourself that you do know better and that you do know how to create a happy, healthy body that's going to celebrate.
That's an awesome reminder. I love that quote.
Yeah, it's great. I blew it up great big and it's on my wall because I remind people I'm coaching, you're going to come through to this. And yes, you're going to eat something and then you're going to feel guilty and you're going to want to beat yourself up. And that doesn't do anybody any good. So yeah, that's only going to cause more stress. Right. And stress is as dangerous to our gut as eating foods we're sensitive to or sugar and chemicals. They all interrupt our digestion. And so when I got sick, I called myself Girl Interrupted because I was. And so I needed to find out how to uninterrupt my body so that it could function as a whole body, which is also where you ended up in your journey.
Yep. It was all about, okay, everything works together. And how smart of that woman to write. That was a really smart book title, Accidentally Weight, because people have these societal ideas of health, right? Of being skinny or whatever it might be. But someone can look very healthy, skinny on the outside, but inside we don't know what's going on. And once we understand that all of these systems are connected and that what you put into your body does matter, you are what you eat. And in Ayurveda, they say you are what you digest.
Yeah, that's good.
I love.
I've had people get mad at me when I say I don't want you to count calories. I want you to count chemicals.
Yes.
No, you have to count calories. No, that's bull. You have to eat real food. And until you start eating real food, you can't lose weight because your body's out of balance.
Absolutely. I think that's the best advice for someone is if they're trying to change up their diet, if they're trying to heal, start to eat real food that isn't in a container, that is actually from the earth. Maybe try to go local, buy organic. This is all around you. It's not too far off. We have this within reach. And we've just been taught to go for the McDonald's or something else. Like that's the real.
We're so lucky because it's so available here. There are lots of places in the world that don't have it this available.
You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. My other rule is if you can't pronounce it or you don't know what it is, you don't put it in your mouth. And that includes things like natural flavors, which is one of the 39 names for MSG, because we know MSG is bad for us. So they've hidden it. How clever of them. So if you don't know what that term means or what might be included in that, or citric acid, most people are not aware that that's a mold. So I don't know what citric acid is until I researched it, but you probably don't know what it is just with me saying the term. So if you don't know what it is, you put it back on the shelf because you don't need it. And if you don't know what it is, your body doesn't know what it is either. So, okay, so now you're starting to feel better. You've gotten through college. Did you find your husband right away, or did you find a positive relationship right away? How long before that happened?
So I'm 27 now, and him and I met when I was 23. So let's see. Funny enough, I knew about manifestation and visualization and the power of the mind at this point. So I wrote in my closet the kind of man I wanted. I wrote adventurous, bearded, tattooed, values family. He is all of those things. But I will say I had to say yes to myself. And there were still moments where, you could say the universe was testing you or whatever it might be. I don't think it tests us, but there were situations when I was given or put face to face with who are you, Bridget? What do you value? What do you believe in? And who do you want to be with? So I was given those opportunities. And I'm so grateful because when I met my husband, not only did I completely start my business, but we went on this beautiful health journey together. Like, it's not even a journey at this point, it's just our life. This is
Mhm.
how we live. We bring different food to family parties, just like you. We put our health first. We go to the gym. We exercise in nature. We're outside. We just take care of ourselves in the most simple way. And I don't think if it wasn't for my early exposure to realizing that the body was connected and having a healing journey, that I would realize this, it is of such importance now in my life.
Yeah, and if you ever start to feel low in any way, for God's sakes, get out into nature. I am convinced that it is impossible to be depressed if you are out walking where there are miracles everywhere and you have to open up your eyes and you have to see them. One of the things that I've enjoyed about isolation, although I will say that if I have to be isolated with anybody, I'm delighted it's my husband. But one of the things I've loved about isolation is when I take a walk, I don't just walk for exercise anymore. Sometimes I take a sensor walk. I walk outside, I feel the air on my skin. I look up and see what color is the sky today. Do we have big fluffy white clouds, or is it wisps or no clouds at all? Then I notice, are there new flowers? I live in California, so we get new growth at times of the year that you don't get in New Jersey. And then I go and I feel the bark of a tree. You have to use all your senses, because if you start to do that, the world is really a wondrous place. And when you start to see it, it sort of puts you back into perspective with whatever it was that was going on in your head. And you let the wind blow through your mind and you go out and you just enjoy being in nature. And I don't care, I'm in suburbia, but if I have an opportunity, I live only 5 miles from the foot of the San Gabriel Mountains. If I can get into the mountains, there's a waterfall a hour walk from my city into the mountains. That's sensational. And it comes into a pool. So that's a place I can go. We have huge parks here where I can go and I can walk and it's different and I can get outside. The Arcadia Arboretum is here, which is where the opening scenes from Fantasy Island were. Deplane, deplane. Well, that's the Arboretum. That was the first settler in my city. And he started the Arcadia racetrack. That was Lucky Baldwin. And boy, was he an interesting guy. But there's a natural lagoon in there and peacocks everywhere. Wherever you live, and I don't care where it is, there's something sensational, not that far away from you, that you can go get into nature. Yes, if you can take your shoes off and you can ground to the earth, it's even better because you need to do that. Yes, if you can get your hands in the dirt, you need the microbes in the dirt. Although I'm to the point, if I get down, I might not get back up. Um, but you need to get outside. So it will clear your head. It will make you more productive. I would have told you that was impossible. I thought stress made me more productive. Eh. Once I started doing all this stuff and I started doing breathing exercises, and if I start getting tired in the afternoon, I'll stand up and just bounce for 3 minutes. Because if I let my whole body bounce with me, blood goes to my head. And then what happens? I work better. So it's a good thing that I take that 3 minute break that just lets energy move through my body again. So you have to do what your body's asking for. And your body will be happy that you did these things.
Mm.
So now you have your husband, you started your own business. Share with everybody now what you do.
Yes. Well, along this journey, I also became a yoga instructor because I had always been told I wasn't flexible, and I like to do things the opposite of what people tell me to do. So became the yoga instructor, studied Ayurveda, started teaching nonprofit for veterans, started teaching outpatient drug rehab center, young autistic adults, really any kind of population that I felt like really needed it. And ultimately, this has transitioned into a coaching business. This has transitioned into a podcast. This has transitioned into a publishing company. And the mission of all of these things directly stems from Lyme disease, where I felt like I didn't have a voice, where it felt like I wasn't seen or I wasn't heard. And the people I work with in the world are typically healers, they're coaches, they're yogis, They're very mission driven, and they have stories that aren't being shared, maybe of holistic healing. And it is my mission and intention to make sure I can amplify as many of those voices into the world right now, because we need the message of empowerment more than ever. We need the reminder that we are strong, that we are sovereign, that we can come back to our bodies, that we have strength within us. And like, I'm so grateful for Lyme disease, because I wouldn't have the clarity on what I do now if it wasn't for that. No way.
Right, right. Same with me.
Yep.
My book, when I started researching for me, which I did for 5 years, I kept everything in little file folders on my computer. And when I went to coaching school, um, I mostly went because I just wanted the credential, because my BA is in English and I didn't think anybody was going to believe me talking about health. But when I graduated, they said, "Would you like to write a book? We have a course." Good God, I have a book sitting there waiting to be written. So I wrote a 500-page book from November till the middle of January. I'm not sure if I wrote it or if I channeled it.
Yeah.
But I had gotten so familiar with everything I was doing. And what I wanted to do was write a book as a layman for other people who had autoimmune disease, who didn't know any of the things that I had learned on my journey. So I go through, what's a health coach? What's a functional doctor? How is it different? What's leaky gut? That was the first term that hit me, because I listened to 19 functional symposiums when I first started researching. I had no idea what I was looking for. And so they had all become functional doctors because they got sick and couldn't help themselves. So that hooked me in. And then there were certain things that kept coming up that they were all talking about. Leaky gut was one of them. So I wrote down, okay, I got to research. What the heck is leaky gut? Toxins and toxic load was one of them. So there's a giant database in the sky, which is ewg.org. First thing I looked up were my cosmetics. They were a 9 on a 10-point scale. I was shocked. Then I got mad. Why isn't my government not protecting me? And then I realized we all need to join together. There was somebody who talked to us in coaching school named Howard Lyman. He got Oprah into trouble over factory farming meat. And his statement is, we all have to be armies of one. And then we have to encourage other people who are armies of one to join us. And the Institute for Responsible Technology says that only 5% have to shift for the industry to start paying attention to us. And in the 9 years I've been doing this, there was only one cosmetic company I could find 9 years ago. Now there's all kinds of organic products out there. So it's changing. Be the leader, be the influencer, but don't tell other people they have to do what you do, because they're going to go on their own journey. And if you do it with them long enough, they'll start to join you.
Yep, that's a really good reminder. My husband says, you can't be a preacher in your own home, right? But we can only like live by example. And the same thing happened for us. The more that we just rooted into our lifestyle, the more people around us, his family, friends said, wow, you look really good. You know, what's going on there? People get curious. So you're absolutely right. We just have to keep living our truth. We have to keep focused on what we can do as the individual. It does create a massive ripple effect. And you're right, like these changes have started and they're going to continue, but it does take us to be the leader, to be speaking on these topics, that there are alternative ways to heal.
Which is why I do the Tell Me Your Story podcast. I want people's stories to get out there, because and if I do one more book, it's going to be all of your stories together in one place, because they really are stories of hope, and people need to hear them, because we've been brought up, and certainly my mother's generation, my mother had an odd disease and I was her advocate, but she'd get mad at me. Why are you telling the doctor that? We've been brought up that he is the who said of the greatest magnitude. And guess what? He is not. We need him. He has expertise that we need to pull upon, but you are the who said of your greatest magnitude. You're the only person who lives in your body, and you have the power to change your health, to change your life, to change your mindset. Your doctor's not even necessarily going to understand that. And stop looking for the magic pill, because it doesn't exist. The magic pill is you.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so tell people now. Let me ask one more question. If you had one thing you wanted people to know, one bit of wisdom that you want to share with them, what would it be?
Mm. The power begins within you. We have to stop seeking external sources and we have to come back to the answers within. Just to go off of your point, like we have to come back here because that doctor might be in the back smoking cigarettes and, eating fast food. They are very knowledgeable, but you know your body and you have to listen to yourself. So when you're having symptoms, when you're feeling not your best, be your own best advocate, seek out and hire your doctor that feels good for you. And the power lies within you each and every day. Say yes to yourself.
Yeah, you have the power, and you're never going to change anything that you're willing to tolerate. So start to seek the power to feel the way that you deserve to feel. So great. How can people find you?
Totally. So you can find me at my website at bridgetaileen.com, or let's do Instagram at blissfulbridget.
Okay, and I will put those links below this so that people can find you as well. And thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation. Anybody who has had any kind of a chronic illness, whether it's Lyme disease or autoimmune or cancer or heart disease, they're all under the same umbrella. Don't be afraid of them. You have more power over your body than you realize. And it's a combination of what you do in your environment and your mindset that will make you well. And so you're an excellent example of that. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for your work in the world.
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much. So we'll be back with another edition of Tell Me Your Story. Thanks for joining us today.